Hey everyone, welcome to CTN and welcome to this panel for Baobab Studios pioneering interactive storytelling and animation. I am Robert Kondo and I will be moderating. I'm not part of Baobab, but part of Tonko House Studios moderating this panel. For those who do know Baobab, I'm sure you've heard a lot. And for those who don't, Baobab is an incredible studio. They're celebrating their 5 years this year. And in those 5 years, they've kind of been really killing it. I mean, they have 6 Emmy Awards for the work they've been doing. They achieved the first Annie Award for VR work. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I could take the entire time just talking about all of their achievements, but more than anything, I think for me, I've known Baobab and especially Maureen from the beginning. And I will say this, their overall mission is to bring out your sense of wonder, inspire you to dream, and make you matter. And I will say that, you know, in my experience of seeing what they've been working on over the last 5 years, their creative and their passion for forging new paths and territories, not just in VR, but in storytelling overall, has just been incredible and impressive. Real quick, I want to introduce some of our panelists. So first, I want to introduce Maureen Fan. She's the CEO and co-founder of Baobab. I've known Maureen since we worked together at Pixar, but also she was an incredible instrumental part of a short that I worked on called The Dam Keeper. And she also, was a incredibly successful vice president of games at Zynga, where she oversaw a little game you guys may all know as Farmville. But more recently, Maureen and I have collaborated along with Cuckoo Studios to also form the Bay Area Animation Alliance, which is a small group of studios up here up north. We also have Eric Darnell. Eric is the Chief Creative Officer, fixing his glasses. But Eric's incredible. He has been in, I think what's most impressive is not just the 25 years of work or the fact that he's the second highest box office grossing writer and director of animated feature films, but that I think from the very beginning, when Eric went to school at CalArts in experimental animation, I feel like Eric has innovated and pushed himself, not just in terms of what he's capable of doing in storytelling, but also I think the medium itself, whether forging new ground in CG animation or in interactive animation, as Baobab is at the forefront of doing right now. We also have Glenn Hernandez. Glenn I'm a huge fan of Glenn. Glenn's an art director and concept artist, and also most recently published his first children's book, Mr. Pig's Big Wall. Has worked in games, but I think his vision for things, both in sort of a charming and appealing aspect, but also just an overall design sense, has always, I've been following Glenn since he was just starting, I guess you could say. And then we also have Ken Fountain. Ken has worked all over from tons of well-known films at DreamWorks, ranging from Monsters and Aliens and Kung Fu Panda to Megamind, as well as at Blue Sky Studios, Google, and most recently Baobab as the kind of the veteran animator, lead animation supervisor at Baobab, and also amazingly finds time to teach as well. So that's our panelist. It's been an amazing sort of journey to watch, but what's really amazing is we have this incredible video celebrating the 5 years of Baobab. Matt, can you play the video?
Happy birthday, Baobab.
It's hard to believe that Baobab is 5 years old. That's amazing.
Happy 5th anniversary, Baobab Studios.
They're 5 years old today, and I wanted to wish them happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Baobab Studios.
I love the stories that you tell as a company, and as the audience just experience it, I really think it's a company with a great future.
We believe at Baobab that there's still a child within us all. There's still a dreamer within us. And that's the reason why we go to the movies or play games, is to experience worlds and characters and scenarios beyond those that we can experience in our everyday lives.
And by placing this freedom directly into the hands of the creators, we can subvert and even disrupt the norms of typified storytelling and production, whether it's about the narrative structure, the cast selection, the execution, all of that stuff. We had to sort of reinvent, and we could reinvent and do it any way we thought was best because we were plotting our own course.
Baobab stories make you matter. They put you in the story. You don't just feel it, you experience, you are it, you get to be part of it.
Our mission at Baobab Studios is to bring out that sense of wonder that you had as a 5-year-old child and bring out the dreamer in each and every one of us by making you matter in the story, by immersing you in these amazing worlds directly inside the story, giving you the opportunity to matter to the characters and to the world around you, and to really be part of the story itself.
When you think about it, it's actually a very powerful creative statement to put the viewer at the center of the story. When you give him enough agency, and when you're successful at that, when you manage to craft characters that he or she cares enough about, that you would willingly be stepping inside the storyline and take action, then I think you're facing a new sort of storytelling.
What's extraordinary about Baobab is that between Maureen and Eric, they come from both the world of gaming, the world of storytelling, the world of animation. Very few people have all three of those combined. And to fully understand how a non-linear story can work, and to have the technical skills to make it work, and to have extraordinary characters, and to create whole worlds and universes, it's very difficult to do.
Maureen, when you talk about Baobab and its vision and the kind of projects that you're going to do, I feel like you are one of the characters that I love to animate.
The audience response to Invasion was mind-blowing. We did not expect the response to Chloe, our bunny rabbit, pretty much around the world. It was one of the most viewed VR experiences. She was in Times Square. She was in, I think, thousands of Best Buy stores as a demo for the new Samsung Gear VR headset.
Baobab is not afraid to go further, out of our comfort zone as a viewer and audience, also as an artist.
In the startup world, it's an accomplishment just to survive for 5 years. And you guys have done that. But you've also managed to pick up, 2, 3, 4 Emmys along the way? Sorry, I don't know what the number is. You guys just keep winning too many awards. I can't keep track of them all.
I've got a show to do.
I've spent my entire career making games, and interactivity is at the core of that gaming experience. It's what makes them so visceral and memorable. And I think what Baobab is doing is finding that same sort of magic sauce and applying it to what we would, normally think of as cinema. And so the marriage of those two is really a new and fascinating frontier.
Happy birthday, Baobab, and congratulations on 5 great years.
Those characters look right at us. They mimic what we do. They pay attention to what we're doing, and they ask us to get involved and to care about the story and to actually do things and make decisions that are going to make an impact on the story.
Baobab makes you matter because what they create is magic. They pull you into this world that you can kind of go and discover and create new ideas and new adventures with.
Happy 5th birthday, Baobab Studios. It's such a privilege to be able to support y'all.
Huge fan of everything from Bonfire to Crow the Legend, Asteroids, so much more. I think you guys are positioned to dominate the world you're in. From animation, AR, VR, the world is yours. Congratulations, 5 years is a huge achievement in all that you've accomplished. Congrats and happy birthday.
That's amazing. Wow. Such an impressive group of people talking about the work of Baobab over the last 5 years. So we'll jump into the panel. Just want to remind everybody that there is a Q&A button. So, we'll answer questions and answers at the end, but for now, I'm going to jump into some questions overall, but feel free throughout the talk to pop those in and we'll take a look at them later. Great. Well, I would love to start with the co-founders, Maureen and Eric, with a very simple question. But why did you guys create Baobab Studios?
Eric, do you want to start? Go ahead.
No, you should. You start.
Okay. Well, I wanted to do animation my entire life. My parents are immigrants and they said I'd be poor and destitute if I followed my dreams and forbade it. So it's been 35 years trying to get into animation. I finally did it. Showed you, Mom. But I love animation because it is, when I watch animation or play animation, I'm transported back to that 5-year-old sense of self where I thought anything was possible. I thought I could do anything. I was invincible. And something happens as you grow older and society gets you to conform to values of fame, money, beauty. But I believe there's still that 5-year-old in us all, that dreamer, and that we have much more potential than we realize. And when I watch animation, experience animation, I feel invincible again and I tap into that potential that I have. And so that's why the mission of the company is to inspire the world to dream by bringing out your sense of wonder and make you matter. So my entire career has been working to get to this point where I get to actually create the things that I believe make me so happy that I hope will inspire everybody else to also be happy and reach their potential.
Wow, that's amazing, Maureen. Eric, do you want to follow that? What was
I've always loved animation, even when I was a little kid, when cartoons were only on Saturday morning, and I'd wake up at like 5:30 in the morning. And I grew up in Kansas, so at 5:30 in the morning, there weren't even cartoons. It was the Farm Report. But I'd watch Farm Report with my bowl of Cheerios waiting for the first cartoon to come on. And I just loved it all my life. And in particular, I've loved 3D imagery, and I was blown away the first time I saw early computer animation and wanted to get involved in that. And after lucking my way into working at DreamWorks and working on several films there, I decided it was time to try something new, but I didn't know what it was going to be. But then Glenn Entis, who you saw in that little video, knew that Maureen was dying to try to start an animation company and knew that I had left DreamWorks and was looking for whatever might come next for me. And we met, and she put a VR headset on my face, and I was just swept away. And so it's one of those things, like, I hope everybody here has had a chance to try VR, but until you do, it's kind of like dancing about architecture. It's really hard to understand what it feels like to be in that world, and it's truly, when done well, can be magical.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, both of you guys are such inspiring individuals, but together, I feel like your kind of points of inspiration for creation, it really does make for some amazing stories and experiences overall. Glenn and Ken.
Wait, Robert, 1 second. I also want to say that in case you didn't know, Eric directed all the Madagascar films at Ants, and I felt so lucky that I tricked him into joining to start this company with me. So I'm super honored, and who would not want to start a company if Eric Darnell was willing to do it with me? Anyway, sorry, go on.
No, absolutely. Just want to jump over Glenn and Ken. You guys joined the studio a little bit later than sort of from its very inception, but what drew you guys to join Baobab?
Want me to go first? Or are you good?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, did you? Yeah. I mean, I can real quick. I'll make it.
Go ahead.
I joined at the beginning of Crow, right when they were starting animation production, and I had been lucky enough to do some 360 video, animation, and instantly fell in love with it, like to the point where I was like, I'm not going back. And when I found out that Baobab was looking for people, and just how much they were doing, I was like, I've got to be on that. I've got to be in that production. And I had a conversation with Eric that just solidified the deal. And he spoke about some of the goals of really, I don't know, like harnessing the empathy of your audience to allow them to make, or to kind of prompt them to make choices. And then the story would kind of go in the direction of those choices, and just chasing that on the tip of the spear, as he put it at the time. And I was sold. I was like, I want to be a part of this. And I've been kind of fired up about it ever since.
Well, actually, Robert, I have to give you some credit actually for me joining Baobab, because it was actually through my friendship with you that I met Maureen and Eric. So that was, a really awesome connection to have, and so much appreciated. What led me ultimately, to join the team was, I feel it's really that philosophy that the studio has of making you matter, making the audience matter in the narrative. Before I had even thought about joining, or even at some point working with Baobab, I'd experienced Crow on the Rift. Before I joined Baobab, I actually worked at a video game company that worked in VR. So I had the headset and I was able to experience it. And I was immediately amazed, not only by the beautiful art and the narrative, but just the immersion and the wonder that I felt while I was in it. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of that. So I was excited when I finally arrived and I started working on Baba. And on my first day, I remember I play tested a really, really early version of one of the first scenes, and even coming to it fresh, and even before we had actually made, the changes, that we got in the final product, it captured my imagination and my curiosity, and just the possibilities of storytelling in that form. The theatrical set design was also super exciting for me because I felt like I was immersed in this living, breathing illustration, and that was just, totally sold me. And that just paired with getting to work with awesome artists and animators like Ken, and awesome directors like Eric, and and all the artists that we have on staff, ultimately is what sealed the deal for me.
Awesome. And Baba Yaga is Baobab's latest project that's been announced. And we'll talk a little bit more about Baba in a bit, but thank you guys for sharing so much. It's obvious that you guys all have sort of a passion for what Baobab's mission is, and I really do respect that. Having starting a small studio, it's one of the hardest things, I feel like, is to kind of have that singular vision. And one of the big things, like I mentioned, is that over the last 5 years, you guys have done a lot of different kinds of work. And Maureen, this question's kind of geared towards you. You guys have won, you've won 6 Emmys. That's been talked about. And you've had 6 stories in VR. You've done also incredibly traditional 2D animation. You're signing film deals, book deals, television deals, series deals for the stories and the worlds that you guys are creating. I want to ask 2 questions. How is all of that done? Because I know that your team is, around 20 people. So it's a lot of work over the 5 years for 20 people. And then also to add on to that, I really would love to know, out of all that, what achievement are you most proud of?
Okay, well, we do it because we hire crazy people. So one of the good things is I'm not from Hollywood. I'm from Silicon Valley, which means that I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. As a woman, I know everything. I know everything that I do. I'm not supposed to be so humble. I'm supposed to be like, yeah, I did all. But not knowing how Hollywood works has actually been a huge advantage, because you have crazy expectations because you don't know how things are usually done, and therefore you could create processes anew and have unrealistic expectations, which then when you hire crazy, amazing people, they rise to the challenge and do it. And that's how I would describe our team. Our team of 20 people are these like Navy SEALs of their disciplines who figure out over and over again how to make magical things happen. For example, asking, getting Oprah and John Legend to do everything for free, right? You're like, you should pay them lots of money. I'm like, no, I had no money. I'm a startup. But you don't get if you don't ask. So I just asked my team for crazy stuff, and they're amazing. But there's also something about being part of a small team in an indie studio that I know you must know, Robert, as well as Alex at Cuckoo, where you bond together like a family, and you have such pride in your work because there's so few of you making the whole entire thing. You feel such pride in the entire piece, like you own it. So then you want to make sure that it's amazing, and you'll do anything to make sure it's good and put in that extra hour, that extra time, and you pitch in, you wear many different hats to like, oh, you don't say, oh, that's not my job, that's the next person's job. You're like, no, my name's on it. I need to make sure it's good. So you like put your hands in everything and try to make it good. So there's that camaraderie and that pride in your work that I think definitely comes out. And ultimately we're creating stories and characters that transcend its medium. Like we never intend to only make something for one particular, like whether it's a game or TV show or film. We want to create worlds, right, that people want to be in, and characters they want to have a relationship with forever. The achievement I'm most proud of was probably the when we went up to get the Emmys for Crow the Legend, partially because I remember I was like breastfeeding at the time. I had to run back and forth between a secret room to pump breast milk and run back into the stadium to see like, did we win? And then winning 4 awards was great, 4 Emmys. But I was really proud because it was we had created Crow the Legend in a real-time game engine in Unity at the time, and we won for best production design and also best character design. And it was first time that something created in a real-time game engine was winning for traditional categories, because we also had created a 2D version of Crow. So that was really exciting. And then we won the best interactive again. So winning on both fronts versus like being pigeonholed into like, this is only VR or this is only 2D stuff. It was just nice to see that our characters, our world and story transcended its individual medium. So that was really rewarding. And then we sent so much of our team there that we were able to celebrate it all together. So it was great.
Oh,
it was
that's
a great
amazing.
moment for us.
I mean, Maureen, just to tag onto that a little bit, because I do think that you guys do everything from film, books, like you guys do storytelling overall. You're working in game engines and things like that. And is some of that, and you talk about the craziness, or, I would call it passion for the work overall. But, is that all of these things sort of winning awards that are sort of unprecedented in these mediums? Do you guys must start in a place that, and maybe this is a bit of a question for Eric too, but must start in a place that does relate back to, all of your work in animation. Is that fair to say? How do you, in other words, like you transcended the tools. Do you think that that's sort of, where does that come from? I mean, what's the core of that sort of ability to transcend from Unreal, the tools, and bring in sort of what is traditionally appreciated in these giant film award shows? Maureen or Eric? And maybe Eric, do you want to answer?
Well, from the very beginning, we just decided that we wanted to focus on storytelling, and that means we're focusing on great characters that you care about, that you fall in love with, that you empathize with, which is true for pretty much, if not all storytelling medium. And so recognizing that from the very beginning, we said, if we do our job right, then these are characters that don't have to be locked inside the boundary of a particular medium. And I've never been one to believe that any story can and should only be told in one medium. Perhaps that's true for some, but I'm always reminded, like, the first time I heard Shakespeare, I was in grade school, and it was on a record player that my teacher was playing. But she was there at her desk crying during the scene of Romeo and Juliet. And for me, it was like the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. And then, eventually you see a movie, and then you see a play where everybody's wearing Nazi uniforms. And then you see The Lion King, which is basically Shakespeare, kind of tweaked a little bit, and everybody wears a lion suit. But, a great story, well told, with characters that you can connect with can really transcend it, it's any particular medium. And so that's really what we've been that's how we've been directing ourselves, I guess.
That's awesome. And is that sort of also related to the overall mission of the company, inspiring you to dream, bring out your sense of wonder, and make you matter? Like that part, make you matter. Can you talk about that part a little bit more, and how that incorporates into what you've been doing over the last 5 years?
Yeah, it's interesting because, we were all babes in the woods when we started. There had been some exploration of VR technically and creatively, but there hadn't been kind of the focus on narrative storytelling and until the last 5 or 6 years or so. And we realized that there is a superpower to VR that other mediums don't have, and that is immersion. You're not looking at a rectangle in front of you. You're not looking at text on a page. You actually feel like you're there, or it makes it so much easier to suspend your disbelief and really believe that you're in a magical, wondrous world. Quite often, especially early on, you got put in these worlds, but nothing about the world acknowledged that you existed in it. And so what we wanted to do with our very first piece is like, well, there was no hand controllers back then. We can't give the viewer a lot of interactive things to do, but we can have this little bunny come out of the woods and hop up to you and look you in the eye. And so, and be happy that you're there with them in the little forest worlds. And so we did that, and we watched it, probably thousands of times as we were working on the piece, and we just kind of forgot about that little thing that we did. And then we took it out to audiences and we're showing them, and this little bunny would come out and look people in the eye, and they would do things that they would never do in a movie or a play or while they were reading a book or watching TV. I mean, they started talking to the bunny and dancing around the bunny and waving to the bunny and trying to pet it. And we're so engaged and so willing to suspend their disbelief. And they really had this sense that, like, this character knows that I exist in their world with them, and they care that I'm here. And so that's what makes people matter. And that was kind of like, I mean, obvious now, but for us, it was like a light bulb went off in our heads, above our head, and an explosion went off in our head. And then we realized that, this is really kind of what we wanted to focus on. So with the next piece that we did, Asteroids, hand controllers came out. And so we gave all these things that people could do to interact with their environment. And we learned really quickly that, like, it's not quantity, it's quality of interactivity that really matters. And if you give people too much to do, then they just become overwhelmed, or they don't care, they don't know where to focus their attention. And so that was really a valuable lesson. But we were able to sort of maintain really clear control of the spine of the story because the viewer wasn't the main character. They weren't the ones going through the changes. In fact, I kind of didn't think that was really anything that was possible. But because these hand controllers could get, especially in inexperienced hands, kind of cumbersome and confusing for Crow, we said, well, let's take away the need for all buttons, and let's just make it gestural. Let's just make it a world that you can easily play in and interact with, that feels natural and feels like play, really, and give you then, with this sort of power to sort of change the weather or to change the alignment of the planets, that you could actually be the driver of the story, to provide the inciting incident for the story, and sort of exist in this almost godlike way above the story, feeling like you have all of these sort of spiritual powers over what's going on. And then finally, with Bonfire, we said, well, let's see if we can actually do a piece where we make the viewer the main character. And I remember long ago from a Robert McKee story class that I took, gosh, it would have been in the early 90s, he said, what story is really about is characters making decisions under pressure that reveal something about who they really are that we didn't know before. And so I was like, how do you make a viewer like make a decision under pressure that's going to reveal something to them about themselves that they didn't know when I don't even know who that viewer is? And so that's sort of how we kind of went into Bonfire and tried to create, especially for the climactic choice or decision that the viewer has to make, something where maybe there is no right or wrong answer, where the decision that you make has as much to do with who you are or who you might be as it has to do with like what's the right choice. There is no right choice, but either choice is satisfying and comes to a conclusion. And that's when I think we were really starting to feel like we were taking our work in a direction that was becoming more, pretty unique in that regard. And so we leaned into that even more with Baba Yaga and kind of give the lead role to the viewer, and they share this role with this other character, so that you're making choices not just because you're making decisions about the future or what's the right decision right now, but you're making decisions because you care about your sibling Magda, this other little girl, and you who have wandered into this scary place. And so the choices that you're making are driven as much by the empathy that you feel for the character as for like trying to move something forward or interact with an object or something like that. And it was Roger Ebert who said that cinema is an empathy machine, and you hear a lot about empathy with VR, but empathy is just sort of feeling someone else's pain. But there's one higher level of engagement, which is compassion, and that's when you take action based upon the empathy that you're feeling. And so with VR done, not the right way, but the way that we're trying to do it, we hope that we're creating a compassion machine where the people inside, the viewers inside the story feel like they matter enough that their action based on empathy is truly meaningful and ultimately feels like they matter.
That's amazing, Eric. It's so exciting to hear about all the different projects and how that has evolved over time. It kind of naturally segues for me into my next question, Ken, for you is, you come from the feature film animation world. How does putting the audience into the story and really making them matter impact how the animation team thinks about animation?
Oh, greatly. I mean, we get to break the cardinal rule, which is we get to break the fourth wall. In fact, you have to break the fourth wall because there's somebody standing there that this character has to constantly be engaging with, and it's really cool. Like I remember the first time I got to like stand next to a character I was animating, something I recommend to all animators. It's really great. And you realize how much of the smaller details that, I mean, you have the larger pantomime you have to worry about. And of course you have to animate the whole body because you don't have the frame cutting off the feet, and you can't skimp on that kind of stuff, but you get to look the character right in the face, and every little nuance that happens with eyes and eyebrows and facial features and small ticks of the head and the shoulders, all of that conveys instantly and really clearly and can go astray so easily. So you have to be that much more precise. However, the reward is awesome because, you get, like Eric was just talking about, like you get such an amplified effect from it because the audience is standing right there. So that's a lot of what you have to sort of change is actually engaging the camera in Maya as much as you can, or the game object or whatever in the engine if you're looking at it in engine. And it also requires us to have to work a lot in engine. We have to take advantage of, like what Maureen was talking about, the real-time technologies to be able to kind of sample our animation, not just in a play blast, but now we have to stand in it and see it in scenes with lighting cues and with all the things that would affect it that you normally wouldn't get to see in a render. So between those two things, I think that's kind of some of the bigger things. There's tons of little nuances, but you don't want me to go on for 3 hours.
Great. That's great, Ken. Yeah. It's really great to hear about. And you know, Glenn, I had a question for you. I did hear, you know, moving from animation and then into art. I heard a rumor that that Baobab has put together a Art of Baobab book. Is that true? And can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, let me share my screen as well. Yeah, so we've been working on a book actually for the last year, and we worked on it both before and after lockdown. And we're super excited about its release, especially because we're finally getting to share some of the incredible concept art that has been produced in-house for all of our shows over the last 5 years. It's going to cover a wide range of work from early sketches to final designs. And we're also going to give you a bit of a peek at what we've been doing for Baba Yaga. So that's really exciting. So some information here, ArtStation will be giving a sneak peek on the 8th of December. Pre-orders are available starting now on Amazon. So you'd want to look for The Art of Baobab. The ebook is going to be available to purchase on Amazon on the 8th of December. So yeah, we hope that everyone, you know, grabs a copy and adds it to their collection, because we're really, really excited to just finally be able to show this work. You know, so many people have put their blood, sweat, and tears into the production and, you know, at Baobab. So, you know, it's just great to finally be able to inspire other people with the work we've done.
That's awesome.
So
And then what's this?
Instructions right there. So but this is just for CTN people at this panel. So if you want a free copy of the ebook, go ahead and post a picture of you attending the CTN panel on your Instagram story and then tag us. And that's all the information on here.
That's so cool. So you guys are giving away a free e-copy of the book.
Yes.
For everyone here. That's awesome. Yes. Yeah, I mean, the paintings that you showed are just beautiful. I mean, it's I got to say, you know, myself coming from the art department and all of that, the art of books are always such a treat to be able to see all the work that goes in behind, you know, the productions. And you guys have worked with incredible artists over the years. So it's really cool. I can't wait. I can't wait to see the book. But awesome, Glenn. Thanks for sharing that. Everyone's mentioned a little bit about Baba Yaga, and Eric, you touched upon it a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about Baba Yaga and what drew you to that story as your next Baobab story?
Yeah, well, you know, you always try to keep your eyes and ears tuned to potential seeds for ideas. And so in my research, I came across the folklore of Baba Yaga. A lot of you probably already know about Baba Yaga, the character. A version of her, kind of partial version of her, was even in Spirited Away, or at least parts of her character were borrowed for Spirited Away. And she, in many ways, is like the typical witch that lives in the forest and is to be avoided. But as I started looking at a lot of the stories that were out there, the folk tales that had been written down, it became clear that Baba Yaga kind of had multiple personalities. Sometimes she was a mean witch, the classic witch that lived in the forest and ate children, basically. And sometimes she was actually a good witch who would help a lost traveler on their way. And then sometimes she was sort of more amoral. She might say, I'll help you out if you do me a favor, that kind of a thing. So she had a lot of different roles and a lot of different fairy tales. And so I thought, well, maybe what we could lean into is this idea that Baba Yaga isn't one person. Baba Yaga is a role that gets passed from one person to another. And the character that you come across is a function of the character of that person who's taking that role at that time. And so this then led us to the story of this little girl who's desperate, along with the little girl's sibling, which is the viewer, because their mother, a great chief of a village, is dying because they've been cursed by Baba. And so they decide to go into Baba's forest and see if they can steal her magic flower, which will save her mother's life. And through the course of their action, well, I think you guys will have to see it, but it becomes a story about how the magic of this witch works, and the change that you and this other little girl named Magda bring to the world of the forest. And Baba is such a cool character too, because she, or at least different, because she doesn't ride a broom. She rides in a giant mortar and uses a pestle as a kind of an oar. And she doesn't live in a gingerbread hut. She lives in a hut that's perched atop these giant chicken legs that's like stomping in the woods, sort of scanning for victims, apparently. And her hut is surrounded by these human skulls, like propped up on pikes. And so it's a even creepier version of the European witch that we know. And we were just so lucky then, of course, to get, Daisy Ridley and Glenn Close and Jennifer Hudson and Kate Winslet, all to be cast members on our show. And Jennifer Hudson even chose to help us as an executive producer. And it's just one of the things that you can do when you have a small company like ours. We decided that we wanted an all-woman cast, and so that's what we did. There's not a single male voice ever heard anywhere in Baba Yaga. And that's another thing that's just fun about being a company that kind of are setting our own rules,
That's awesome, Eric. I'm super excited about Baba Yaga and checking out more. Ken, can you actually tell us a little bit more about, especially, I'm interested in sort of, Eric, you talked about how in this one, the audience actually plays the role of a character, but can you talk a little bit more about that role and what role the audience plays in this story? Ken?
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course. Yeah. You, as Eric said, like you come in as the main character's sibling, and instantly you are sort of, the main character pleads with you, Magda pleads with you to kind of join her in this mission. So, I feel like a lot of the opening scenes are a lot of pleas and convincing.
Where is the smoke coming from, Rick?
Oh, Tina, you need to mute. There she goes. Okay. Anyway, so that's the way we sort of set up from the beginning. Your role in the whole thing, you're instantly engaged, which is something in almost all of our pieces we really have to tailor. Like, how does this thing start? Like, how do we let the user know who they are? And in a lot of versions, we discover when you show it to people and they're like, yeah, I'm not quite getting it. And that's, again, one of the cool things about being small and nimble and maybe, as Maureen said, like crazy, like we just scramble and we go, okay, what do we got to shove into the story there and place in here and rewrite this and reanimate this scene and kind of do those things really fast and then make the audience understand, this is the role I'm playing. These are the decisions I get to make. This is, and then of course they just get to decide how they feel about all of this. And hopefully we've done our job if they're really engaged right off the bat, and a lot of that has to come through performance, like we spend a lot of time crafting the exact timing and the moments and the looks and the glances and the interactions with that to get that feeling.
Awesome. Yeah. It's really, I did get to see a little bit of it, and it is really something else. One of the things that I felt like, one of the things that's really exciting about Baobab over the years is playing with different qualities of look and how things feel. Baba Yaga is no different. It has a really unique look. It has a bit of a look of theater, paper cutout, a little bit of hand-drawn animation. Glenn, can you tell us a little bit about how you guys came up with this design and in the end, also how you achieved it?
Sure. Well, I'm pretty new to the team at Baobab. I came on as a production designer kind of on the last leg of production, but before me was Matt Tsugeshi. He was the co-designer and he originated the initial look and feel. And it was my pleasure then to, sort of collaborate with him and to ultimately take up that mantle and honor that style. But I also had a lot of room then to kind of put my own mark on the final show. So the overall look was really influenced by a few things. One of them was like Georgian and Russian textile and folk art, but also theatrical set design, as you mentioned, was definitely a big influence. And it actually works really well within the limitations of VR. But even while working within those limitations, like we're able to push ourselves artistically and technically. So our main focus, of course, putting the user, in the middle. It's kind of like theater in the round in a sense, but obviously the user really matters in this story. So our main focus is, to guide the user's attention through the narrative by being really selective of where we add the details. So much like in theater, where certain spots are like illuminated on a set to like help guide the story, we really use some of those tactics. As for the texture treatment, we have really amazing technical artists, and they were able to work directly from our concept art to reproduce some of the textures. But we also really collaborated with them closely to achieve the right amount of texture fidelity for some of like the most important moments in the narrative. So there was also moments like Ken had mentioned, where I got to get my hands in the engine, get my hands dirty, and I was able to directly influence some of the look by parsing out layers, directly from concept art and integrating that into the environment, and also adjusting placement. And this was especially the case, once you experience Baba Yaga, you'll see like the prologue and the epilogues, and also some of the transitions. Those were scenes where I could really kind of go in there and try to craft the look. And then of course it was up to Ken and all the other magicians that we work with to bring those to life. So. From there, it was really just a matter of just collaborating with all the technical artists and, to work out the narrative flow. So overall, it was just a really great example of a team effort that integrates both the technology and the art, all the tools that we have at our disposal. So.
Yeah, definitely for our audience, when it comes out, you should definitely check it out and see everything. There's also a theatrical, and this is something, Maureen, I wanted to ask you about. Baobab Stories are not just VR. You guys kind of do VR work, but you also are moving into different mediums like books and film. Can you tell us a little bit more about that aspect?
Sure. We announced a book series with Penguin Random House called The Magic Paintbrush, based off of the old Chinese folklore. You paint something, it becomes real. And that is a multi-series book series. And then we also announced Intercats with First Second Books, which is I believe you guys have done graphic novels with them too. It's the most prestigious graphic novel imprint with Macmillan. So those are the book things that we've announced. I can't announce with who, but we had a first look deal, a film first look deal with one of the big 6 major studios for many of our IP to become feature films. And we've signed one series, TV series with a streamer, and about to sign another one with a streamer too. I can't announce anything yet. We'll see. But it's really exciting that people have responded so well to our IP. The one that has been announced, I can say, is early on Roth Kirschenbaum Films, who did Maleficent, Snow White and the Huntsman, Alice in Wonderland. They actually approached us after seeing Invasion and wanted to partner with us to turn Invasion into a feature-length, normal flat film, because they fell in love with the bunny as well. So we are expanding massively, but it's been overwhelming. We're super honored with all the incoming requests to take our IP and take it into other mediums as well.
Awesome. That's amazing. And I have one last question, and that's sort of a general question. I know, Maureen, you touched upon it quite a bit, but Eric, I wanted to ask, from your perspective too, what do you see as what's next for Baobab, and what can we all look forward to?
I think Maureen really covered it. I think, as a company, we want to continue to really lean into all the people on our team and recognize that real value comes from the collaboration that is so important in animation. And I think anybody who's worked in animation for any length of time understands how important that collaboration is. So it's super critical that we have really talented people, but it's also super critical that we have people who can work with each other and who understand the value and how, you know, the sum can be greater than the parts if you really open your mind and your eyes and listen to each other. And through that, as Maureen said, we're pushing forward on all fronts, telling stories in film and TV and books and VR and other interactive forms that hopefully, you know, fulfill our mission of, you know, bringing out an audience's sense of wonder and making them feel like they matter.
That's awesome. Yeah, I cannot say enough. You know, it's interesting for me, like Baobab and Tonko House, our studio, you know, we have a great relationship, but also just everything that Baobab has going on is so, I'm telling you guys, our audience, that it's not easy as a small studio to get one thing done, let alone everything that you guys have going on. I really do want to applaud you guys on your 5 years, but I also look forward to the next 5 because obviously everything you guys touch is just so warm and innovative and exciting. So with that, I'm going to close out.
Wait, Robert.
Wait,
but I want to thank you. I want to thank you because you've been there with us since the very beginning. So both, I'm going to make a plug. You don't need a plug because you guys are famous at CTN, but Tonko House and also Cuckoo. I was really honored that we were able to together form the sorry, the Bay Area Animation Alliance. Say Bob for sheep. Anyways, but having, you know, it's hard being a small indie studio, but then when you have what we consider family with Tonko and also Cuckoo and other people to talk to and help out with, like you guys always look at our stories and give us feedback on both the art and story, and I hope that we've been helpful to you too, but doing that makes us not feel so alone. So thank you so much for all your help.
Oh, thanks, Maureen. That's super sweet. Yeah, thank you guys so much for everything. Real quick for the audience, if you haven't noticed, there is a Q&A panel. So we'll switch over from kind of our little panel talk and switch over to a Q&A. And I'll kick it off with you know, a question for the audience that I actually think is universally applicable to where we are in time and also sort of a lot what's going on throughout the industry. And so Maureen, I think maybe this question's for you is, you know, Chris Fung asks, with the COVID situation, how has it impacted the overall animation industry? And particularly, are we seeing from home, are we to see working from home to be the new workplace in the industry? I imagine that you guys are, you know, the studio's working from home now, but I think the question really is do you think this is a new standard? This is potentially how we may work moving into the future.
I think animation has been less impacted by COVID than like live action where you have to have people all together. So I feel very fortunate about that. One thing that's been great about our studio is we have staff that is around the world. We have animator from Poland. Ken right now is in Virginia. Another one of our animators in LA, art director in LA. We get the best talent wherever we can, because for us, it's all about how does 20 people get all this stuff done? It's having the best people together. So we've learned ways to work together online really well. And at first we had all this angst about, well, what do you lose the creativity and the camaraderie and all that? But Ken is the best example of overcoming this. He actually put together with his animation team, animation coffee. What is it? Coffee talks, Ken? I don't know. You can describe it.
It's called Animators Coffee Break every day. It's a must. It's a mandated schedule item.
But it's super exclusive, and I don't get invited to this, and I feel really sad.
Everybody's invited.
Where the cool kids go, and just hang out with each other and show each other animation. Anyways, there's ways to also have that creative spark. That being said, I'm actually an introvert, an extreme introvert. So you would think I kind of love not needing to be around people, but I actually really miss the creativity that you do get randomly by walking through the hallways and whatnot. So while I do think this shows people that you can do remote, I don't think it completely replaces in-person interaction at all. and I really miss it. And I can't wait to get back to it. They actually, I can't remember, there was an article in the New York Times about how people thought you could go remote a long time ago, and then everyone was like, oh, we can go remote. And then they had a slight productivity game short term, but over long term, they saw that there was a productivity hit. So then they all started going in person again. And I think that we're going to see that cycle happen again with COVID.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree that there's been interesting creativity coming out of having to move into working remote, but also there's nothing quite like being in the same room with the people that you're making stuff with. I have another question. This one is regarding the process and sort of, the question is, how has the working process changed for each of you doing VR projects in comparison with traditional animation? And what's the more exciting thing about working with in the VR medium? And I think each of you have touched upon this a little bit, but Eric, is that something I can direct towards you?
Yeah, well, I think, for us, the process has changed dramatically from show to show, even within shows. There's not, especially when we started, there weren't VR pipelines to work with. We had to invent our own. I know there's other questions in here about, how do we deal with rigging our characters for VR and real-time engine stuff, and we had to write all of our own proprietary pipeline stuff in order to make that happen. And an amazing team of really smart engineers to sort of help us do that. But even just creatively, it's a whole different way of thinking about something. It's not thinking about film in 3D. It's about thinking about VR and recognizing that it's not a movie, and not using the movie toolkit necessarily as your crutch. There's not just go-to tools that you can pull out of your cinematography grab bag. I mean, there's it's just a whole different world, primarily because in terms of cinematography, at least, the viewer is the camera. and so the viewer is deciding what the composition is. The viewer is deciding what's important. And so people ask me, well, as a director, what is it like to give up all of this directing control? But I don't think of it as like giving up control. I think of it as having a different set of tools, a different set of controls. One of them might be, for example, to inspire the viewer to make the completely free decision to look exactly where I want them to look when I want them to look there. As long as they don't feel like they're being forced into it, or that it's cloying or too obvious, and they feel like, oh, I want to know more about this because I just want to know. And then suddenly they're looking exactly where they need to look to get that little moment with a character, that little bit of storytelling that's going to help carry them forward. And the list just goes on and on. I think for all of us in VR, we've realized that, and this isn't to say that we're, well, Maureen said before, like at the beginning, I can never say that I don't know what I'm doing or I didn't know how we were going to do it. But the reality in VR is that no one knows how to do it. So having a little bit of humility, and like I said before, really having an open mind and leaving your ego at the door and sharing the experience with as many people as you can, and try to understand how your audiences and how your collaborators are all reacting to it, is the best way to sort of learn and start to build that toolkit that we didn't have 5 years ago.
And outside of just VR, if you're just thinking about interactive animation in general, more of my experiences from games, and I've done film at Pixar, but most of my experience has been at games. And what's been really helpful is like in trying to do interactive animation, whether it's in like TV or if it's in VR, oftentimes you hire people from games and film, and they want to like live in their world. Like this is the way it was done, and they want to like bring their processes in. And it's not to say those processes aren't good. It almost helps to pretend like those processes don't exist. Even words, like how do you define what a game is? Like, is putting any interactivity into something, does that turn that into a game? You need to throw away all the terms, all the processes, and come up with new definitions and new terms for this new product, new medium that you're creating, rather than just keep on using the old things, because sometimes you can get bogged down by preconceived notions if you're just like from one world or another.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, obviously I work in film, and so, I can't imagine if you didn't have that sort of control of a camera and that frame in which you can point everybody. It's hard to describe like how you guys have taken your work in that medium and then now blasted away that sort of frame. And I really think it's hard to describe. I think if people have not tried VR and that interactive experience, you just like trying to describe it, you just have to try it on and see. And I do really think that it's just a different experience overall. It touches upon different sensory aspects of involvement and where narrative lives. And so it is a really amazing thing that you guys are forging forward on, and getting the world to be able to see what's possible. Here's another question, Glenn. I think this one maybe you can answer. How much, the question's about cultural inspiration and drawing things from different cultures and designing characters specifically for Baba Yaga. How much does cultural customs, traditions, and clothing inspire your designs?
Well, like I said, I came on a little later, so I wasn't really around for all the exploration that was done ultimately for the final designs of the characters. But I know just from looking at what we had explored, that we had several, we looked at a lot of stuff, and really ultimately, what happens is when you're looking at reference and you're trying to absorb as much of that information, like a sponge, and then you kind of filter it through your own, experience and through your own interpretation. But ultimately what we really laid into was more like Slavic, culture, and so like sort of Slavic indigenous culture. We had other references like, island culture and stuff like that, but we really, since Baba Yaga is more of a Slavic folklore, tale, we wanted to really focus on that, and also we wanted to think about, that Slavic, culture, on an island, so you put it in a different context rather than like you have it in, the deep, sort of like the Black Forest or something like that, you have it in a different context. And I think that really ultimately informed, what the characters, turned out to be like. So just the shapes, and especially like, Baba Yaga herself, we really were leaning into the idea of, her using her mortar and pestle, as the form that she gets around, that's like her mode of transportation. That's very traditional in the actual traditional folklore of Baba Yaga, but we were also trying to make sure to vary it up a little bit, and most of the depictions you see of Baba Yaga, her mortar and pestle, are much different. We wanted to really try to make it our own. So we have several inspirations, a lot of different reference that we look at. That's just part of the research process when designing characters and sets. But then ultimately, it comes down to sort of, sticking the, throwing noodles on the wall, and then, trying to condense that down to what ultimately that character is going to look like. And also it really depends on the personality of the character too. So it's not just like, you're designing a cool character with a cool shape. It's like you also want to tell the story of the character through the shape of the character. So in the case of Baba Yaga, we had this idea that maybe at some point she was like a normal human being, like her proportions were very normal. But then as she continued living on beyond her years, like she began to kind of morph into like a much more like amorphous sort of figure, and it then ultimately became that, maybe underneath her robes, she's not really, human anymore. It's almost like there's spirit that lives within her robes. So, I think we take a really, we take a very methodical, we have a very methodical process for designing characters and doing all of our research. And it's part of the reason, why I really wanted to come to Baobab, because I feel like they really take that, make that an important part of the design process. So yeah, yeah, that's my answer.
One quick point is Artur Marcol, who's an amazing animator, and you guys should all watch his Kobe Bryant animation that he did on the side, which has like over 1 million views. But everyone go watch Artur sing. We love Artur. But he's actually in Poland, and he's obviously very familiar with the Baba Yaga story. And so he made sure to help us keep it authentic. And same thing for Crow the Legend. That's why we brought in Native Americans in Philanthropy as our executive producers, and also Randy Edmonds, who is a now 84-year-old Kiowa Kado tribal elder, to make sure that we were designing things correctly, and that the story, because it was the first story told with Indigenous worldview in animation in this format, that it was authentic and that we're getting the right people to work on it. But getting diverse perspectives is super important to our studio, partially because I'm an Asian American female. But I also think that in general, entertainment has a way to transform perspectives in a way that no other medium can. And I think it's our obligation to do so.
And I just want to mention that that the name of Artur's piece is MVP, most valuable player, but MVP. Artur, recall, you can search for that online. And somebody mentioned Dear Basketball in the chat, and that's another great basketball movie done by Glenn Keane, who you saw in the opening video that we showed, who's been one of our really helpful friend and advisor for the 5 years that we've been working at this company.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I mean, as a studio, it's great to always be artistic and express yourself, but to be accurate and portray a point of view and introduce new ideas that, are true to sort of their source material is challenging and costly. It's incredible that you guys go through the extra steps to be able to do that. I really appreciate that. I have a question, Ken. This one's a little more technical, and there's also sort of a compliment attached to it, is that the animation is really good for a real-time rig. I imagine they're talking about just the general work of Baobab and what you guys have been doing. The question was, are there differences of Baobab's interactive rigs versus feature or television series rigs?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, we have the luxury of achieving feature film quality animation from our rigs in a game engine, in a real-time game engine, through proprietary technologies. But it was one of the first things I remember being so liberating when I came here, because I was used to working with other companies that were working in the Unity engine or whatever, and knowing what the limitations were to those, everything being joint-based rigs and stuff. And so so I feel kind of spoiled now because we get to work with, there's really no limits to what we're able to kind of send to the engine with our animation. And it is probably different than your typical real-time engine rigs, which is great.
Got it. Okay, so there's one question, actually, I think it disappeared, but it was...
I've been typing in answers for some.
Oh, you've been typing answers. There was one question, Maureen, that was directed at you about networking. I kind of wanted to hijack that one a little bit, because throughout the conversation, I think the 5-year anniversary video was really impressive with all the people, but I think you guys have mentioned also the kind of talent on the voice talent level that you guys have worked with, from Oprah to John Legend, Kate Winslet, Daisy Ridley. How do you choose this talent, but also how did you find them? Like, how did you end up connecting with these incredible talents, voice talents?
Well, we have a wish list, and then we just find any friends we have to these people. It really is the way we did it. And it helps a lot having the amazing investors that we have, right? So Sherry Redstone, who's a chairwoman of Viacom Paramount, she's always helpful. Jane Rosenthal, right? She knows like every actor and actress known to man. She founded Tribeca Film Festival, and she was a producer for Irishman. And then also Peter Chernin, he's also investor, helpful. Fox, so now Disney is also our investor. So all these people have helped us be able to get to people. But it's not easy to go to these people and ask them to do things for no money or basically for free. So the way we convince them is just through passion. It's ultimately about the creative. We show them We tell them about the project, what we're excited about, show them our previous projects. And oftentimes they're really drawn to the story, but they're also drawn to certain issues that we talk about. So for example, Crow the Legend was ultimately, it was a story about how the crow became the black crow with the cawing voice that you know today. But our version is a story about diversity, right? How the skunk is nervous about her farting smell and the moth flies into the sun and into the light, and how you have to learn to accept your own flaws or the things that are different about yourself before you can accept others, right? And so I think both John Legend and Oprah felt very strongly about that, and they also really connected to the indigenous, the Native American aspect. It is one of the reasons why we created that piece both in VR and 2D, to make sure as many people could see it as possible. And specifically for Baba Yaga, their themes of environmentalism, but also a female empowerment. That's why we have an all-female cast. So all our cast members are really passionate about those issues as well. So, and it also, of course, helps that Eric, having directed all the Madagascar films, that they feel safe, right? With Eric, they know that he's worked with really famous people. They're in good hands. They see, the awards that we've won and also who our investors were. And so they're like, oh, these people can't suck if these people social proofing from all these other people as well. So it's a lot through passion, but also for Kane Lee, who both Robert and I hold dear to our hearts. But Kane is a great people person, and you can't say no to him. Like when he talks about something and he's excited, he dances while he talks. And then that enthusiasm is just so infectious that it makes you want to say yes to everything he asks.
Yes, we both love Kane. We both work with Kane Lee as a producer and head of content. So we're running about 10 minutes over. Thank you guys for hanging for an extra 10 minutes. I'm going to end on one last question and direct it towards you, Eric. And I feel a little bit bad because this is a question that I get a lot, and it's always a tough one to answer because it's so big and there's so much to talk about. But I do think that you are a great communicator and a real inspiration for me. So I'm going to ask, what are some of the things that inspire you as a storyteller? I think the question's really about inspiration and where you draw it from.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like I want to understand something about the way people think. And that means a lot of different things. It means like what makes a person who they are, what makes a person change who they are and become something different, what makes a person like pretend to be one thing or say one thing when they're really thinking the other. And that comes right down into the art and craft of animation itself, right? And Ken could talk more about this because characters or you could even say characters rarely say what's really going on in their head. That's where so much tension comes from a narrative and storytelling. And so you have to have a character that can deliver a line, but then also provide a clue that there's something else going on. There's something unsaid. There's and all of that kind of getting inside of things is really interesting to me. And I know we could go on forever about this, but the other thing that I found really interesting, particularly about getting in people's heads as it relates to VR, is once we kind of had that bunny episode, I started doing more research into how we communicate with each other, to find out are there other tools that we can use, and looking at some of the psychological studies that have been done. And the power of eye contact is, I mean, we even communicate with our animals that way. It's super meaningful for us. Or as somebody had mentioned, mirroring, like you see two lovers at a restaurant and they'll both like be in the same pose, looking into each other's eyes. And it's not like they made a decision, hey, put your chin on your palm, it just happens naturally. A good salesman knows this intuitively, if not literally. And so by knowing about the viewer themselves and what they're doing, how their hands are moving, the haptics, where their head is looking, where their attention is going, then we can really also get inside the viewer's head and push on those buttons that are sometimes below the level of consciousness. It's just a subliminal, subconscious way that we all communicate with each other. And that to me is really, really exciting too, because sometimes even, anyway, I'll stop there. But going from the science to the art and then everything else in between and just being immersed in a magical world, that's why I've always loved animation, because I kind of like going places that you could only go to if it's offered up from the imagination of another great artist and storyteller. And so that's a big part of my love of animation in particular. And I just want to finish by saying, but I love all animation, and I came from the experimental animation department. I just love the moving image. And, you know, when people ask me my favorite film, I say it's Norman McLaren, Begone Don't Care, which is all drawn directly on the film itself. It's all just drawn on clear leader. And it's such a beautiful work of animation mixed with sound. And so I'll watch it all.
That's awesome. That's such a perfect ending, Eric. Thank you so much. Everyone on the panel, Maureen, Eric, Glenn, Ken, thank you so much for your time and sharing it with everyone. Maureen, do we want to flash up the how to get the art book?
Yeah.
Sort of
Glenn,
thing.
Can you bring that up again?
Just for everyone. Yeah. But thank you guys so much. You guys are a constant inspiration, and we're so lucky to be, you know, finding ways to partner with you guys. Thank you so much for having me, and everyone. Maureen, is there anything that you wanted to add on? Is there anything that you wanted to speak to?
No, I'm furiously trying to answer all the questions by typing in the Q&A. If you have more, just type them, or you could just email us. Let's see, what's the best email? I don't know. Or you can write it into our social channels too. We'll answer it too that way.
Awesome.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the rest of CTN.
All right.
Bye guys.
Bye.